Now let's talk about consensus. Consensus is the general agreement about an opinion that is shared by all the people in a group. In the Ahead of the Curve 2014 summer workshop, participants had to go through a protocol and come to consensus or agreement on all of the item classification decisions. Consensus challenges you to articulate your reasoning and defend your claims using evidence. We hope that going through this modified consensus that you will be challenged by the thinking of others and that you are forced to look at the scenario in a different light. One of the benefits of going through consensus is the synergistic effects of the process. More is learned from the viewpoints of others and from these multiple perspectives than can be gained from a sole individual's perspective. A few goals we have for consensus is that you understand the protocol for coming to agreement, that you're prepared to use the consensus protocol, and that you understand consensus means you can live with the decision made by the group. Here is a modified version of the consensus protocol that was given in the Ahead of the Curve summer workshop. For the purpose of PAL instruction, we're going to modify this into a claims evidence reasoning format, but it is helpful for you to understand what participants from the summer had to go through. In addition, what live consensus looks like in case you hope to replicate the processes that you have learned through taking this course in a face-to-face format. So first, there's a round-robin format where everyone goes around and states their alignment decision. In this, it is not necessary to explain the rationale for the claim. If after going through the round robin and everyone is already in agreement with their alignment decision, there is no need to go through consensus. Therefore, you can record the decision and move on to the next item. However, if you are not all in agreement through the first round of the round robin, begin round 2, where you have 30 seconds to justify your choice or your rationale for making that classification decision. Here, you can also ask clarifying questions, but you should not spend more than 30 seconds on reasoning for the decision. After all of the potential classifications have been vetted with the group, move on to the round-robin format again. Now hearing everyone's rationale and evidence supporting their reasoning for their classification, you'll go around and state your choice or your revised choice. Now would be the time for individuals to state their final decision for the item. Here it is important to note again that consensus means you can live with the decision, not necessarily that it was your primary choice. Using the 0 to 1 scale, it'll be necessary to state whether or not they can agree, that is their preference. If they can concede, that means they can live with the decision that the majority of the group have, or if they're not okay with the majority and they disagree, now record the vote for the majority. And if there are any zeros for this item, you can flag it for further review. So some major takeaways from going through consensus. This is a task-based learning opportunity, so doing really helps solidify the understanding. Also, the standards call for productive struggle, therefore it's important for teachers to also experience productive struggle, especially in this sort of collaborative environment. Another major takeaway is that collaboration and cooperation are key. This allows individuals to see multiple points of view that also help accelerate learning. It is important to understand that practice makes perfect. Once is not enough. Regular opportunities for hands-on or experiential learning are necessary to increase one's comprehension and overall understanding of the content. Now let's practice with a real math item. From going through the discussion thread, I have selected this group's item that we're going to gain consensus on. The first item we're going to discuss is the use graph to identify incorrect written statements. I will moderate the discussion and facilitate our consensus protocol. We will go in a round-robin style, starting with Brooke, followed by Jared, then Chris, then Jake, and lastly Drea. This process should take no more than 5 minutes. We will start by going around in order and stating our alignment. Brooke, will you please tell us what you chose for the math domain.
I chose statistics and probability for the domain.
Agree.
Chris, what did you choose for the...
Agree.
Agree.
Since we all had the same answer for the domain, we will move on to the standard or substandard. Brooke, will you please tell us what you have for the standard and substandard?
I chose 6.sp.5b, that is grade 6, statistics and probability in standard 5b.
I agree.
Oh my gosh, Brooke, that's exactly what I got.
I disagree.
Since Dre and Chris had different answers, please tell us what you chose and why. For the substandard, I chose 5C, that is grade 6, statistics and probability in the standard 5C. My evidence was that students had to describe a pattern and correct deviations from the pattern in their response.
For the standard substandard, I actually chose 7.sp.4. That's grade 7, statistics and probability, and standard 4. My evidence was that students had to draw comparative inferences about several populations.
Thank you guys for sharing with us. So now that we have heard from both of you, does anybody have any clarifying questions that they would like to state?
I'll pass.
Yeah, Drea, in what ways does the student compare the two populations?
Well, good question. I guess from rereading the question, the student really only observes the data specific to one population and explains the correction by observing the provided graphical data.
I have a question. Chris, what measure of center was applied for the students when describing the overall data pattern?
For sentence 2, increases should be decreases. In sentence 3, 2 hours should be 5. A student has to be able to read the graph and add or subtract in order to determine the pattern and infer how much more sleep newborns require. Excellent evidence and rationale supporting your judgments. So from deliberating on the evidence and our judgment support, now we will again go around and state our choices or our revised choices. Brooke, will you please start?
Yeah, I'm going to stick with 6SP5B.
I agree, 6SP5B.
6SP5C.
6SP5B.
And I will change to 6SP5B.
Since we still have not come to full agreement on this item, please indicate your opinion. We're going to use kind of a scale. So a 0 just is you don't disagree. You're not okay with the majority. A 1 is you concede, you can live with it. And a 2 is you agree, and that is your preference. So starting with you, Brooke, is it a 0, 1, or a 2?
It's a 2 for me. I agree this is my preference.
2, I agree as well.
I guess it's a 1. I can live with it.
That's going to be a hard 2, Ashley. Yes, this is my preference.
And I say 2, yes, this is my preference.
Great. I will record our consensus of a 6.sp.5b. Since there were no zeros, I will not flag this item for further review or discussion, and we can move on. Side note, for simplicity and brevity, we opted not to deliberate on the mathematical practices and corresponding student actions, as well as the depth of knowledge in the revised Bloom's taxonomy. However, for your consensus rounds, as necessary or with time allowing, please vet all variables for consensus.